The most common problem that I found from day one was my job was, of the international markets that we have, like of all the markets that we have, find out which market we should invest more in, what product we should push in that market, to which consumer base, demographic segmentation and so on, through which sales channels to drive, at what price and so on, to drive the desired ROI. And, the first, thing you need to calculate all of that, you need data. So, I was like, okay, where's the data? How do you guys make these decisions? How do you go about this? Well, they just use instincts. They fly around different markets and they just make up their minds that way. So you fly around, sleep in a 5-star hotel and and talk to executives in the market, and that's how you decide. That doesn't work.
Well, welcome back to the Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. I have a really awesome guest with me today. Now, would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Joseph Rutakangwa. I run a company called Rwazi together with my co-founder, Eric. We're based here in LA. I've been running Rwazi since 2021. We're a decision AI platform for enterprise teams. We help them drive growth using our own proprietary decision systems. The problem that we solve for large companies mostly, they're threefold. The first one is we help them capture, retain, and grow market share. Second one is we help them increase their marketing ROI. In other words, decrease the cost of acquiring consumers. And then the third one is we help them increase their customers' lifetime value. And we do that by the decision AI that we've built, which makes recommendations, simulated outcomes, and shows these teams the next moves that they can make to drive growth. All trained on zero-party data, which is data voluntarily shared by consumers through the default activities. And the advantage is the wide range of context that this data is based on, from 190 countries, millions and millions of consumers, billions of activities, 6,000 plus languages, 40,000 plus devices. That helps our AI have correct context on the market dynamics, the consumer world, which is very advantageous for the businesses.
That's awesome. And it's interesting. And I'm not even gonna act like I understand all of that, because that's just beyond what I'm able to comprehend at times. But it's really awesome because one of the things too, and so I've been talking to my daughter about businesses, and I have a 9-year-old, and again, part of my job is educating her on businesses and money and all these things. That was, again, like part of the reason I began this podcast, is because I didn't have that information. But one of the things that right at the beginning you mentioned, and I think this is a really important thing to talk about, and it's something that I try to remember every single day in my business, is you said at the beginning, the problem you solve. And I love that, because I didn't understand a lot of what you were talking about for what the AI did, but I did understand what you were talking about with the problem, and the problem they were coming to you with. Because, we go back to talking about business and growing, first business in the US. I know that as a kid, the business idea that was always talked to me was a lemonade stand.
Yes.
Everyone's like, your first business is a lemonade stand. And I was just like, why lemonade, man? I never was a big fan of lemonade. Not my favorite drink. Tell me, a glass of milk and some cookies or something like that. Yeah, I'd get that. But lemonade was never my thing. However, the problem was, the pain point, the problem that they were trying to solve is that people were thirsty. And it's a hot summer day and you're out there and you have a problem. And my daughter and I were talking. And so in Vietnam, one of the things, I used to work as a children's teacher. And one of the things that I always saw was a problem. And this is not something that we have in the US as much, because there's a good there that they don't sell here, which is wild.
Yeah.
Kids get a pencil, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a pencil right in front of me. I don't. I have pens only. I see my daughter stole. Oh, here we got a pencil. I got a pencil.
Gotcha.
I got a pencil here.
Yeah.
And this pencil is got still got an eraser because I
Yes.
didn't let my daughter
Yes.
have it. But you send a pencil to school, and the kids will just be like. And one of the things that's interesting is you have all of this, and we have a tiny little eraser, and this always lasts longer than this. So my daughter and her classmates, when I was a kid in school, we have the erasers that pop on the end of the pencil that it's like a little like thing. They don't have those in Vietnam. I was blown away when I went to find her supplies. All her pencils, the erasers had been used up, and I was like, "Wow, it doesn't exist here." So when we went back to the USA, I picked up a bunch from the dollar store, super cheap, and I just brought them back and I gave them to my daughter. And when she got to school, the kids were just like, "Nice, that is nice. I like that."
Everyone
And so
wanted it.
she's
Yeah.
right, everyone wanted it. And so she's like, "I got an idea. I'm going to start a store." And I was like,
Nice.
"Okay." And so she started her store and started telling me about the idea. And so with the store, she was like, "So I came up and I sold a bunch of product today." And I was like, "Nice.
Nice.
My
Nice.
daughter's going to be
Good. Good.
rich."
Yeah.
Right. Great. Doing the right thing here. And she's like, "I sold one eraser for free. And if they wanted two, they had to pay me $10." And I was like, "So you're giving away?" I was like, "So everyone took the one eraser, right?" And she's like, "Yes, everyone took a one eraser." I was like, "Alana, you're not selling anything, you're giving it away. But that might be a good marketing thing, but you got to start charging people at some point in time." But what struck me is that she realized that her classmates had a problem. The problem was that everyone's erasers were getting running out, and then she was like, "I've got a solution." And I love that because at the end of the day, good business is all about finding problems and creating solutions. What was it the catalyst for you to start looking for problems in your life that you could create solutions for? What was it? When did you start getting that first itch to go out and solve problems for people?
So your daughter's story is very nice because it actually highlights something that's even more fundamental, that the problem you're solving isn't someone else's problem. You're solving your problem, like the problem that you've experienced yourself. So the reason she was able to find the correct product for the market, in this case, the classroom, is because she was the person struggling with the problem first. Before other people, before you observe that other people have that problem, she had that problem. So she went and solved it for herself, like figured out, what's the solution. You have access to this other market in the US. We can get the product, bring the product to Vietnam. I'm talking a bit as if she's running like a big supply
Right?
chain.
It's like a multinational corporation, like,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. But
Flew over.
she experienced the problem. She has a first-hand experience, which is the most important piece in the equation of solving problems and eventually getting problem market fit. Anyway, so she had the experience. She had the solution. The solution worked for her. Then other people saw that the solution is working, and then they had the same problem. Of course, they started buying. So that's the same experience that I went through. So 8 years before starting Rwazi in 2021, I started working as a consultant. So I went through a summer program at Lehigh University out in Pennsylvania. Great experience. And that experience introduced me to the world of business. And from that, I started doing consulting, right? And I worked mostly with like multinational companies, US, Europe, across multiple verticals, energy, transportation, healthcare, and then, CPG and so on. The most common problem that I found from day one was my job was of the international markets that we have, like of all the markets that we have, find out which market we should invest more in, what product we should push in that market, to which consumer base, demographic segmentation and so on, through which sales channels to drive, at what price and so on, to drive the desired ROI. And the first thing you need to calculate all of that, you need data. So, I was like, okay, where's the data? How do you guys make these decisions? How do you go about this? Well, they just use instincts. They fly around different markets and they just make up their minds that way. So you fly around, sleep in a five-star hotel and and talk to executives in the market, and that's how you decide. That doesn't work. I need, a whole lot of data, and primarily you need data from consumers. Like in this case, in this case, you're the company, you don't know which market. You need to be in the market. You need to find out what people are using. You need to not find out as an observer. You need to find out from a first-person experience, what are these people using, how are they spending, and so on. And that data wasn't available in the market. Most of these companies use first-party data, like their own sales data, their own customer feedback data, and so on. And my problem with that is that's only showing you in like environments in the bubble with which you're operating, so you can't see outside of your bubble. Second party data, which is data you get from like research and other sources, extremely limited, heavily extrapolated. So these guys would do, you've seen it in polls, like political polls, where you just make phone calls, ask 1,000 people, who are you going to vote for? They tell you, and then you say, oh, this is what's going. This is who's more likely to win, and we've seen how wrong that is over and over again,
Right?
because it's heavily. You're asking someone, like, if I make a phone call and I ask you right now, when's the last time you drank Coca-Cola? You'd be like, well, maybe 2 weeks ago, but who knows? It could be a month, it could be yesterday. It's not clear, and so on. So massive gaps in second party data and traditional research, and you're not experiencing the problem dynamic from the actual user in the default routine. So doing 8 years of that, I was trying to build decision systems at these companies from which they can make correct decisions that would drive the correct desired ROI without using their gut, right? So a lot of executives make gut calls. We've seen in like even large companies, people who are very experienced. Like I use an example of, you saw the AB and Bev drama in the US with their Bud Light marketing that went completely south. That's these people in marketing, they're very experienced. They've been at this company for years. They have a lot of information like data on their customers, but they just decided to run a campaign that's different. And just trusted the instincts. They looked at the news, looked at social data, and made assumptions that this would work without actually using correct decision systems. Same thing we've seen at Jaguar, right? Which
I was
is
going to say Jaguar popped into my
Jaguar,
mind right
yeah.
away.
Like Jaguar, these guys have been doing business for 100 plus years. CEO had been in the company for like 30 plus years. They know what they're doing. It's not that they don't know what they're doing. They know the problem, they know the customers, they know all of that. But they did a very big mistake, which is identifying a problem that you are not experiencing yourself. Like saying,
Uh,
oh, everyone is jumping on EV. Is it a problem? Like, are you personally, experiencing that problem? Is it a problem that you're trying to solve for yourself first? And then are you seeing other people try to solve for that problem? Or are you just doing it because it's policy and it's maybe good for the environment and so on? That's not a problem. Like, solving things just because the outside world or it's a trend and so on, that's not like a true core way of identifying a problem, right? And we saw what happened. 97% of sales wiped out. So I was the guy in the multinational companies spending, a couple $1 million trying to buy data to build internal decision systems in these companies for 8 years. So I was the guy on the other side. I was the customer. I was my client customer. And that struggle of never finding a solution, having to capture data myself, use that to train models, to build models internally for decision systems, doing that for 8 years, never finding a correct solution. Operating within multinational companies has like a lot of politics and so
right.
on. So it restricts your ability to build a correct like technological product. And 8 years later, I decided to start a company with my best friend Eric, who was in capital markets, experiencing the same thing. And our approach was, we went to customers. So we were the customers, so we know the truth from the customer perspective. And I was lucky that I was a customer across multiple industries. So I know that is the case in transportation, there's demand in finance, there's demand in telecommunications. So I know that for a fact. But what we still needed to do was, when we went out to start a business and we pitched investors, we did that classic mistake, which is you leave corporate, you go to start a business, you immediately get into a Silicon Valley thinking of raise pre-seed, build a product, and then take it to market. wrong move. So we went, pitched a bunch of investors. Of course, we couldn't raise pre-seed, and we ran out of cash, so went broke. And we're like, okay, so what do we do? Do we close the company, or do we pivot? We're like, no, no, no. We have forgotten how to actually build a correct business, which is heavily circulating around the problem, right? So went back to prospective customers and we told them, look, this is the problem that we experienced when we were in corporate. Are you experiencing this problem?
Right.
What are you experiencing? Then we just started collecting data. And people were like, yes, we have that problem. Da, 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 da. Okay, this is what we want to build. We want to build this decision AI that would make decisions for you. But very expensive to build. We don't have the cash. Right now, we have a prototype. We can at least capture the data that we can eventually use to train. Now, what's the absolute foundation problem that we need to solve for you today that would make you subscribe immediately? Like, we need to know what's happening in the market right now. That's all. Okay, so if we have verified data directly voluntarily shared by the consumers from the default consumption activities, that will get us subscribed. We don't care how the data is delivered. We don't care if it's in Excel. None of that stuff matters. We just need to know what's happening in the market from verifiable data directly from consumers. So we started. That's how Rwazi started. So we started charging customers, sharing data in Excel, and by the end of first year, we were already, generating massive revenue and we're profitable, right? Just because we solved the foundation. When you're building a decision system, you need to train the system, you need the correct amount of data, you need massive scale, context, fidelity, and so on. So the actual foundation of all of this is the data piece. So we started by solving the data piece first, which is answering the question, what's happening in the market? Then we continuously have reviews with our customers all the time. Because my engagement with my customers isn't, hey, can you buy more of this? Hey, we have this new feature. No, no, no. My engagement is, oh, so what's going on in your world? How are tariffs affecting you? What's going on with supply chain, with the supply chain, now that we have COVID, now that we're coming out of COVID, now with, you're trying to understand what the customer is struggling with. So you can
Right.
identify problems that are not just happening to one person, but they're experienced across multiple customers and therefore multiple verticals and so on. So the second layer, customers started telling us, we have the data, you guys are helping us understand what's actually happening in the market. But now, can you tell us what this means for a business? So they
Mm,
started wanting to use us as like consultants, like to tell them, okay, so what does it mean exactly for a business? Like, if I continue sleeping market share this rate, what does it mean? Like, what will happen in the next 5 years and so on, and etc. And we're like, okay, we're not, from a structural perspective, we can't scale by adding more human consultants, and because that increases the operational costs and so on. So like, okay, we'll build the next layer of our decision systems, which is uncovering signals. So when you have massive volume of data, good, you can see what's happening. The second piece is, well, from all that data, which signals are more important for you based on your desired results? So if you're a new entrant in the market and you're trying to get your early customers and hit a certain revenue point, then you have certain signals that matter to you. If you're a legacy player in the market, you've had market share, but now you're sleeping because all these new entrants are eating up your market share. And what you want is retention, right? You're looking at different signals. When you've had retention, but you've been in number 3 spot for years, and you need to start crawling up, and you're figuring out, do I increase my market share by adding new products, by changing my price, by being in the new sales channels? You need different signals, right? So we built a system that is called Senna, our AI, that uncovers the correct signals from not just the external market data, which is real consumer activity, but also in your data. So these companies have a lot of transaction data, they have a lot of
yeah.
like feedback data, but they still mess up, right? You've seen like Bedbat and Beyond and all these guys. They have data, but they still mess up because they're not uncovering correct signals from data. It's a bunch of noise. So we built that signal layer, which shows you, based on your role, based on the function that you're in, correct signals you should be paying attention to. and how to auto.
Interesting.
Then the problem evolved. Then they were like, okay, brilliant. So that drives expansion. Remember, in the business side, the first part gets you subscription. Second part is an expansion. So you're getting more revenue in the process. Then they're like, great. So now we can see what this means for business. Can you tell us what we should do? So in my monthly business reviews, got a lot of customers always asking me, oh, so what do you advise we should do? If you can send us like an email, breaking down the actions we should take. I'm like, oh Lord. So now we're getting back to consulting, right? Like, okay, so we evolved our system even further, started training Senna to figure out, okay, now if you have all this data and you can cross-reference across different services and products, and then you uncover inquiry signals for this particular customer, can you tell them based on their macro environment, their competitive landscape, and how consumers are behaving? Can you tell them the moves they need to make properly? And this is like this is like years on end of correct training, correct putting correct parameters, blocking hallucination because you don't want hallucinations, right? In this case, and so on. So Senna started generating recommendations, which are context-based recommendations based on the dual context. So the context of the nuances of your consumers, across different states, across different counties, cities, countries, and then the context of the person who is interacting with the AI. So if you're in sales, you have a different recommendation matrix and simulated outcomes. If you're in marketing, different. If you're in supply chain, different. If you're in a bank and you're trying to optimize your banking product, you have a different experience. And then lastly, well, how do we actually how do you actually go about executing? Which is we know what's happening in the market. You've told us what this means for our business. You've showed us what we should do next, the next moves and the simulated outcomes. Then let's layer, how do we actually go about executing? And that layer, we launched the Copilot last quarter in July, which now helps these companies with these teams across these companies with execution. So the journey there, and we'll be launching the agent next quarter. So the journey there is constantly looking at what problems I'm experiencing, as a person, also running a business. I also have a team. I also have like by the way, the same problems we're solving for our customers, we have them ourselves. So we're
Right.
working to capture market share. We're working to decrease our cost of acquisition and increase lifetime value, right? So how are we actually looking at the problem ladders within our customers and solve for them over time, right? So that's my approach. And you mentioned the lemonade example in the beginning. The reason lemonade hits all the time because food and beverages, those are like the things that will always be in demand because people have to eat. So, we're all humans. We all know we need to eat. So it's like, it's no brainer. We know everyone needs food. Everyone needs to drink something. So that's like a very fundamental problem. And which to entrepreneurs, it's very important not to say, oh, well, AI is a big thing right now. It's a massive wave. I should start an AI business. For what? You should only start a business. You know what I'm saying? Like, you should only start a business that's solving a problem that you have been experiencing and you've been trying to solve for yourself. And then, people in your house, people in your neighborhood, expand from that point. A good example I give people is look at your, banking app. Look at where you spend your money. Number one, that's your biggest problem. Like that rank where you spend your most money, that's the rank of the problems that that you have and the problems that will monetize. Because like for instance, like taking plastics out of the ocean, very big problem, right? But how much money are we spending on non-plastic products? Very little. So it's not a problem that if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to make it, that's not a problem you should be solving, right? That's someone who is in a privileged position where they can access capital and access government customers and and all these big companies. Those are the people who would solve that problem because they're in close proximity with the potential customers. But if you're like you're in college, you're finishing college, you don't have access to all these things. You just need a business that resonates and that will convert and monetize faster. You just need to come all the way down to earth and look at your own spending habits and solve for those things.
I like that. That's a good point. And one of the things too is like it is very uniquely personal. I remember during COVID, there was a problem that was happening in the U.S. that no one here in Vietnam understood, and I'm going to explain this. When toilet paper was suddenly in short supply, and everyone was like scrambling for toilet paper, people in Vietnam didn't understand that. And I'll explain why, because it wasn't a problem here. In Vietnam, people have a hose next to the toilet. And it is a different system. And so, when there was a shortage of toilet paper worldwide, if you had have tried to market that solution to the wrong customer, there would have been it would have been a complete flop, and there would have been nothing to happen right there. But you have to, so again, like having the right data, having the right knowledge about your customers, and I love that, focusing on some problem that you have, because it is. I remember when I was doing my MBA, I was working with some of my classmates, and a couple of my classmates were like, "Hey, let's do AI." And I was like, okay, cool. Like, what does that mean to you? And they're like, yeah, it's like technology. I was like, it's a very sophisticated app. Like let's be real. It's a very sophisticated system, computer program that does stuff. I mean, everyone loves to use AI as a tag word, but really it's just a really good computer program that does certain things. But they're like, and I was like, so you have a great computer system, computer program. What are you going to do with it? Oh, because that was the bigger question. It's like, so you have a problem that needs to be solved, whether it's, my wife and we are working right now on some new songs for her. She's a musician. And we had talked about this a
Nice,
little bit at the
nice.
beginning.
Yeah,
We'll have things right now that we're looking at, and there's some really innovative solutions to the problems we have. One, we live in Vietnam, and the orchestral strings in Vietnam, because not a lot of people are practicing violin or cello. It's just not the instruments that people grow up playing here. There's a lot of piano, lots of pianists that play here, a lot of great keyboard players, a lot of great guitarists, because that's what they have grown up around. But there's just not. So the strings. So when we were trying to get a song that needed this very powerful orchestral vibe, my problem was I need a couple of different ways to get there. One, we started off with some VSTs, virtual instruments, but they didn't have that.
they don't have that. Yeah, they don't.
They don't have that. They don't
Yeah,
have that thing, that richness, that sound. And so we were like, all right, what are some other solutions we had? And we started looking at things that were challenging. So one of the best places I go to look is on Fiverr, and Fiverr is awesome. You have people around the world, amazing musicians, and all types of things. People doing podcast editing, people doing whatever you can imagine. Um, and we were looking at people, and the prices though were very wide variance. There's one guy he'll do two tracks, one violin and one cello, and he wants $500. And the guy's very, very good, but I was just like, two tracks only. Another guy was $200, and he was 15 tracks. But there are other people that are looking at that going, well, what if you don't have that money? And like right now, Suno, the AI app, is AI music arrangement, which, getting into the ethics of everything, that's a whole other conversation. But there's a new feature that they have that you can input your guitar track, you can input your vocals, that's you doing it, and say, I need to get a drum beat behind this, and it generates a drum beat. And I was just like, well, that's fascinating, because it was a problem that we had, and like there's a ton of different solutions for it, and like that was the cool thing. There's this solution, there's this solution, there's this solution. Well, you know, you as an entrepreneur have to sit there and go, well, which one is the most? I love the sound of real instruments. I love the sound of real guitar because of its imperfection, because of the layering and the improv. And certainly I do think AI will be able to solve some of those and create some things like that. It'd be amazing in the future. We're getting there. But I still love that nature of just something that's super organic. So for me, Fiverr is a brilliant idea. And, and it's like when I look at those things, and like you were talking about, that thing that you spend the most money on, that is such a great way to look at it. Because if you can look at something that is really a problem in your life and then figure out a solution for that, just like I think I want to come back to the story of my daughter. The core problem for her was she was running out of erasers on her pencils. And when she shared her friends the solution that we provided for her, it was an instant hit. And I think that that's where it comes close. And it also, like, I had a student, I had a student who was a PhD student, not my student, but a PhD student who came onto uh, my Sean Trey Show podcast recently, Alyssa Carson, and she's training to become a future Mars astronaut, which is pretty rad. She's young, 21, 22 years old, and she's absolutely awesome and motivated. And while she was doing her PhD, she said the most important thing that she was told was that whatever you do your PhD on, make sure it's something that you enjoy, because you are going to be putting so much time and energy into this thing that it better be something that you want to wake up and do every day. I have a video production company, and I love making videos. I love getting up and making content that can inspire people, that can change the way that we go about doing things. Coming back to the story about my daughter, it's powerful when it's something as personal. Now, for aspiring entrepreneurs, what advice would you give them to lean on as they're trying to find problems and create solutions?
Yes, yes. First of all, I'd like to comment on your on the
Please do.
AI in music. AI music, honestly, I think for me, I'm not buying that because my as I was listening to like so many AI generated songs and things like that, one of the things that I realized I want in like a piece of artwork is a human, like an actual human and the human experience. It's like I want the transfer of the human energy and to experience that through their art, right?
I love
So
it.
you know what I'm saying? So if it's whether it's like, it's like, paintings, whether it's movies, whether it's music, I want to know that this was created by a human, because only that way I can know that there's a person who is, traumatized, has good experiences, and is transferring all of that in this piece, and I'm experiencing that through their work, right? So it's a different. So what you're mentioning about like the guitar plays and so on, you want to feel someone's imperfections and their style and their energy through the artwork. So I don't think AI in art is like a good idea anyway.
No,
But there are
I'm with
people
you.
who like it. So yeah.
Yeah. But going back to the entrepreneur, that's a great conversation that we should definitely have someday, because you and I are in
Uh,
the same boat. And right now,
yes.
it's definitely a hot topic. There was
Yeah.
this AI act. There was an AI generated actor
Yeah.
that is SAG right now is kind of going But
Exactly.
but the idea, though, coming back to the because dude, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole if I'm not
Yes.
careful.
Yeah.
What can an entrepreneur do so that they can really find a problem and find a solution for it?
Yes. I think um my advice to young entrepreneurs or people who want to be entrepreneurs would be to not think of it as as a company, as a massive business, they shouldn't think of it as a tech platform. They shouldn't think in terms of project, tech, company. They shouldn't think in those terms, right? So I recently wrote a book called Never Stay Broke. In the book Never Stay Broke, which is out now, I take it all the way back to zero, like to the absolute first, layer, and the movements you make from the first layer and how it stacks up eventually becomes a big company, right? If you want it to be a big company. And the absolute first layer is usefulness. So as an individual, we talk about purpose, passion, what you like, and things like that, and what I should do with my life, and so on. The absolute base, I believe, the absolute base of all of that stuff is usefulness. Our purpose is just to be useful, right? That's the first thing. So young people and meet young people all the time. Say, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Da 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 da. You don't have to know what you want to do with your life. You just have to be. Yeah, you don't have to. You just have to be useful, right? So you wake up in the morning, you go, to your neighbors, you start doing door to door. Like this, I'm going like old school, old school. You go door to door, you knock at people's doors. Hey, I'm so and so. I finished school. I'm around. I have energy. I have this. I can do a lot of things. I would like to know, what do you need and how I can be of value to you. That's it. You're not pricing. You're not saying I can do like babysitting, Excel, and all that. Because if you mention what you can do, you're eliminating you're eliminating and ignoring the needs. So you just say, I'm here. I want to know what you need, and I'm here to be of value. Right? It could be cleaning a carpet. It could be, walking a dog. Whatever it is, you want to be of value to the other person. That's like the basis. Like the basic usefulness, and it's so basic to the extent that even at the absolute first moment of movement, ignore the concept of money generating, right? Just think about usefulness all the way in the terms like how I got myself unstuck when I finished school and I couldn't get a job and all that. And, everyone wants experience. I don't have experience. I can't get experience if I don't have a job. The way I broke that loop is by volunteering. I was like, I need to be useful to someone. I'll just go, there are people who have like homeless shelters. There are like people who need food. There are people who need, a bunch of things. I'll just be useful for someone. And then guess what? As you become useful, the demand for your usefulness starts to increase. For you to service demand, you have to now eventually apply the price so that you can limit the amount of people you can serve. And that is how you start monetizing. So the absolute first layer is just to be useful. In a big economy like the US, like US is the richest country in the world, richest country in history. Even when people are like struggling and so on with the current economy and so on, I would like people to know how other countries, you live in Vietnam, you've seen other countries in the world, they don't have the level of circulation of like money like you'd have in the US. In the US, can wake up, clean someone's carpet and get $50. Like it's easy. Like it's relative to everyone else in the world, it's the easiest in the US. So the path to monetization is very easy. But that level, that like formula is the same across the world. So you become useful. You go to the closest person to you. This, I mean, your roommate in your house, your parents in the same house, your siblings, to your neighbor, to the, your community around. If you have a car, you drive around, you expand your reach. You're going door to door and asking how you can be of value to that person. At this point, you don't know what the problem is. You don't know what they're looking for. So you're just being useful to them. Now, you're not setting the market price. As the demand for your usefulness starts increasing, that's when you start establishing a price. Now, the blocker for us, most people, I had the same blocker myself, like if I didn't have this blocker, I'll be running Rwazi at, right now I'm 33, I'll be at this level at 23, right? But as humans, we have blockers. And the blocker is our perception that servicing, like providing a service, rendering your service, is somehow beneath us.
Right?
This is a weird thing that
It's very widespread, that belief.
Exactly, and this is why, by the way, most people choose to stay. They could stay at home for 3 years looking for a job, but they won't be willing to start a lemonade stand because they feel like if I start a lemonade stand, I'll look like a failure, look like I went to school, I did software engineering or whatever it is, and now I'm selling lemonade, or I'm teaching kids to do math if after the degree or master's degree, right? So you feel like there's a weird perception that like doing something, rendering your service to a customer, to someone in need, makes you puts you beneath that person, right? Very weird thing. Now, the misunderstanding of that thing is from the assumption that working for a company is not rendering a service. Like everything we have on earth is about usefulness. You provide it, you're being useful to someone else or to a group of people, and they are rewarding you in return. Our parents are in service to us when we were kids. as we age, we have to start being in service to someone else. You're in service to your spouse. You're in service to your kids. It's all about being in service to someone else, right? And there are a bunch of people who are in service to us as well. So it's an exchange. That's like the human existence. So if you remove that layer, then there's a second layer, which is, well, I can be in service of people if I'm building technology because it's like cool and respectable. But if I'm, cleaning people's carpets, that's like bad, right? And the problem with that thinking is you're already picking and choosing and defining what kind of problems you're willing to solve, which it completely ignores the market signals. But what you're doing there is like you're completely ignoring the market signals, the demand signals in the market, and you're saying, I will only serve when I see a signal that's like XYZ, right? And what's the problem there? The problem there is if you're saying I can only provide services in, let's say, software engineering, right? If I build, like, say, an app, right? You're defining a customer, like a customer group, like your ideal customer persona, that you may not have access to. They're out of your reach. The cost of acquiring the customer may be higher than what you can afford, and so on and so on. So that's where you find people get in this loop of saying, well, I only want to serve Fortune 500 companies, but to acquire one, I'll need to spend $100,000 because you need to hire, you need to spend a lot in sales and marketing until you get one. So I'll go and raise VC funding so I can get enough money to acquire Fortune 500 companies. And that's how you raise VC money. You spend all of it and they don't come and you end up shutting down the business, right? So instead of doing so, like at Rwazi right now, we serve like Fortune 100 and all that. But we didn't start by saying want to solve for Fortune 500 companies. We said want to solve this problem for a business, any business. And by the way, our subscriptions back then, they were like $1,000 a month. Right now, they're like $10,000 a month to begin with. But back then, it was $1,000 a month. And we started with like normal, local, medium-sized enterprises and started moving from there. Just perfect. And we treat all our customers the same. Whether you're, the biggest customer in the world or you're like the smallest, we treat them the same, and we render our service with the same energy and same value. So the coupling your identity and dignity and the assumption that by rendering service and becoming useful, you're now becoming, it's beneath you, and picking what kind of service you're willing to provide is what alienates people and makes it take too long to generate, to monetize and end up building a serious business. So I would say those are the early things that you need to change as a young entrepreneur or like someone who is in business. You need to change, right? So that by changing those, you're opening up access to a whole host of opportunities that you'd otherwise ignore or you'd be aware of because of those limiting internal like mental frameworks, right? Now, once you have that stuff out of the way, you're useful, door to door, any service, anything that you can be of value. Then when people start sharing the things they want, they're open to pay you to solve for them. Then you start picking things and you create a parameter, like the parameters. And my personal, bias is towards choosing things based on one, what is consuming the least amount of energy to deliver. So that's one. Second, what's generating the highest gross margin. So gross margin basically is like how much money are you spending to deliver that service and how much money are you generating from the service. The gap between that is your margin, right? So what's generating the highest margin, and what then that's only then that passion shows up, which is what are you willing to keep doing every day, you're happy to do every day, you wake up every day. That's when that comes in, because you can be happy to do construction, right? But construction just consumes so much energy, at least for me, right? There are people who are like very physically fit and they would happily do that. But for me, construction consumes so much energy. Even if I'm happy to do it, it's just you spend so much energy. Even if the margin is high, the energy consumption is too high that the scalability of it becomes a limitation. So if if it consumes the least amount of energy of the things that people. By the way, you're not picking this in your house with with your notebook. You're only assessing based on the things that people have told you they want to pay you to do. So if person A says I want you to clean my carpet, person B says I want you to walk my dog, person C says I want you to babysit, person D says I want you to take care of my aging parents. Then you're looking at all of those. You're saying of these, which one is going to consume the least amount of energy? So you rank them by energy consumption, and then you're saying which one has the highest margin? You rank them again, and then which one would I do every single day? You rank them, and then you pick. You put that in Excel, and then you pick the one that's ranked the highest, right? And that's how you start now figuring out what this is what you end up doing, right? So it's a combination of these three parameters that ends up becoming the thing that you love. In my case, I have always loved math, right? When I was a kid, I always loved math. My mom was a very good math person, so she taught me math and so on. And as I grew older in school, I learned that I don't just like math. I like I like guesstimating. So in math, I was used to be called an air math person. So I'll do math in the air. Like if I see a mathematical problem, whether it's like algebraic equation or something, I would want to solve it. I want to have an answer in my mind first, and then go about the solution, right? So like normal math people, like people like really good at math, they don't approach a problem with an answer already set. They want to go in, and use the formula to get to the end. For me, I like finding out what's the end and then which formula can I create. I don't care about what I'm taught in this class. What can I create to get to the end, right? So that kind of thinking, because I'm heavy analytical, that's what drew me into the world of data. So in the beginning, it was I was very good at design, graphic design, video production. I was very good at languages, so could write a lot and all of that stuff. So I was very good at many things, but I went to market with all of them, right? Video production, I'll do video production for weddings and things like that. Well, it took too long, so you have to do the whole wedding and da da da, da, all of that stuff. Then people pay you 50% upfront, and then you do the editing and the cleanup and all that stuff, and then at the end is a problem getting the last 50%. It's like this thing is not worth it. Graphic design, love it, love design, but people are subjective. They they start, fighting with your prices because they think it's easy work. You know, so
Right.
now it started, so it started becoming frustrating. Like, guys, do you think do you think when the logo looks beautiful, you think that thing, like, even if it's an extremely simple logo, like, why haven't you been
It's
able to
so
do
hard.
that? Why haven't you been
Right.
able to find someone else who can? Because it's not easy. But customers in the environment will be like, no, this was easy, just did this. I'm like, okay. So I was like, okay, people aren't valuing the output or the work that's involved in the output for me to continue doing this, because the margin is not good. So I end up moving from that. And so I was good with languages, so I would write a lot. And so I started a digital magazine and write a lot. Magazine got to like 20,000 readers in 87 countries and all that. But the challenge is, well, advertisers. Put advertisers in the mag. We got advertisers. Are they enough to pay our salaries? No, and all that. So that didn't work out as much. Got awards. We went to the Scottish Parliament, got awarded and things like that. But it couldn't scale. So I did a lot of things, and I wasn't looking for what I love. All of those things, I love them. But the thing that paid me a massive, massive, massive amount of money, a massive margin, very seamless to do, and just flows, that was decision systems. So modeling, figuring out ways to capture correct data, what data to capture from who, at what scale, doing that model, how to train AI systems. That was extremely exciting and highly rewarding and the least energy consuming work that I've ever done. And that's how Rwazi became successful, because we had that combination of those three things. So that's what I tell young entrepreneurs.
That's awesome. And because it's like at the end of the day, you have to have all these different things and combine them.
Yes.
And if you're not able to combine it into a reasonable thing that you can actually act upon, then you're not heading in the right direction. But I want to ask you this: where can people look for more information about you and find you online?
Yes. So people can find me. So first thing, this book, Never Stay Broke, is already out. It's on Amazon. You can go on Amazon and get the book. You can find me on Instagram. So I'm just called Joseph Rutakangwa. So if you find Joseph Rutakangwa in any platform, you'd find me. Instagram is at J Rutakangwa. On Twitter/X is still at J Rutakangwa. On LinkedIn, it's Joseph Rutakangwa. On Facebook, Joseph Rutakangwa. And yeah, so that's I'm mostly active on Instagram, but I post my my lifestyle, travel, things like that, and
That's
things about the
awesome.
book on and the music. You can find the music on Apple Music. I put most of my music there because it's like it's a better platform compared to like other competitors. But yeah, people can find me online, Joseph Rutakangwa.